The days have been long. The hours pass like a flood. Each moment seems to demand more from us than we can give. You feel the weight of expectations, of responsibilities, of what is never said, but is always there, like an accusing look in the corner of every decision. There are days when you can barely breathe, suffocated by a burden that only you know, something that seems invisible to the rest of the world, but for you is a mountain that grows every morning. Perhaps you have already asked yourself, why me? Why can't I find rest? Where is God in the midst of all this? These are questions that echo deep within our hearts, especially when it feels like we are drifting in a sea of uncertainties. Faith, my brothers and sisters, is the only lifeboat in such a turbulent ocean. Not the faith that is pronounced only in easy moments, but the faith that withstands fire, that faces the trial as an opportunity and not as punishment. However, this faith is not something that is born fully formed. It grows, is worked on, molded, and frequently is challenged. God does not delight in shallow faith, which cannot bear the weight of adversities. Just as the potter does not put a fragile vessel to use before exposing it to the heat of the kiln, God puts us through trials so that we may be prepared for something greater. He wants us to be strong, unbreakable, capable of sustaining His blessings and glorifying Him in any situation. Modern life offers us many escape routes, distractions, occupations, and even silence. But instead of bringing relief, these paths often lead us to a dead end, a place of isolation where we feel even smaller and powerless. It is in this place that we need to choose. To trust in our own strength, or to throw ourselves completely into the arms of God. I know that sometimes trusting is not easy. Sometimes the pain is so intense that it feels like God is distant, that He doesn't hear, that He doesn't see. But know this, God is never far away. He is present, even in silence. And this silence, as frightening as it may seem, is an invitation for you to seek Him, to depend on Him, in a way you may have never experienced before. Have you ever been in a waiting room, waiting for an exam or a result? Do you remember the anxiety, the knot in your stomach, the desperate desire for time to pass faster? That's how the test of faith is. There are no shortcuts, no ways to speed up the process, but there is one certainty. If you remain steadfast, God will not only give you victory, but will do something even greater within you. He will shape your soul, strengthen your spirit, and you will come out of the trial different from how you entered. When Joshua led the people of Israel, he faced challenges that seemed impossible. The Jordan overflowed, the walls of Jericho were unshakable, and the fear of the unknown was always lurking. But Joshua did not retreat. He did not allow what he saw to determine what he believed. He listened to God's voice and followed, even when everything around him seemed to say otherwise. The same goes for you. Perhaps today you are facing an overflowing Jordan, a situation that seems bigger than you can bear. Maybe it's debts that keep growing, a marriage that is falling apart, a job opportunity that closed, or perhaps it's something deeper, something you can't even describe. God says to you, march. Don't look at the circumstances. Don't listen to the voices of doubt. Don't let fear paralyze what faith wants to release. Just as the waters of the Jordan only receded when the priest stepped into them, your victory will only come when you take the first step. Remember Peter, who walked on water to meet Jesus. As long as he kept his eyes fixed on the Master, the impossible happened. But the moment he looked at the waves and felt the wind, he began to sink. How many times have you done the same? How many times have the waves of circumstances stolen your gaze from Christ? Faith is not the absence of fear. It is moving forward, even when fear is screaming in your ears. It is declaring, as Peter should have done, I will keep going because the Lord is with me. Be honest with God. Open your heart. Cry out to Him with all your strength. Do not be afraid to cry, to surrender, to show your weaknesses. God does not seek perfection, He seeks surrender. He seeks a heart that recognizes its need for Him above all else. Perhaps you feel that you have failed too much, that you have strayed so far that there is no way back. But let me remind you of something. God never rejects a broken heart. Think about the prodigal son. He had lost everything, had fallen into the deepest abyss. But when he decided to return to the Father, he did not find rejection, but open arms. That is how God is with you. No matter how much you have erred, He is waiting, ready to restore you. Life's storms are inevitable, but never forget that Jesus is in the boat. Even if He seems to be sleeping, He is there. And at the right moment, when you cry out, He will rise and calm the winds and the waves. Draw near to Him. Do not allow the world to distract you. Do not let the voices around you drown out the voice of God in your heart. He is faithful, He is just, and He is powerful enough to transform any situation, no matter how impossible it seems. Today, I invite you to make a decision. Not just to believe, but to act by faith, to step into the Jordan, to march around the walls, to walk on water. God did not call you to a life of defeat, but to a life of victory. But this victory only comes when you decide to trust Him completely. May you find rest amidst trials, strength amidst struggles, and peace amidst storms. And at the end of it all, may you look back and say, "It was hard, but it was worth it, because God was with me every step of the way." Write in the comment, "I choose faith," if you believe that God will do the impossible for you. When we talk about faith that overcomes trials, we are not dealing with something distant, theoretical, or superficial. We are talking about the essence of our walk with God, what defines us as Christians. The faith that overcomes trials is like the blood that circulates in our spiritual body. Without it, there is no life. Without it, there is no progress. And I ask you, with all love and sincerity, how is your faith today? Is it a living faith, pulsing amidst difficulties? Or is it weakened, suffocated by problems and voices trying to steal your confidence? Be honest with yourself, because God already knows your heart. There is no shame in acknowledging weakness, but there is danger in living a faith without depth. Maybe you feel that your faith has been shaken by losses, disappointments, or frustrated expectations. Maybe you are in the midst of a battle so intense that your vision has become blurred, and all you can see are the giant waves threatening to swallow your life. I tell you, this is exactly what the enemy wants. He wants you to look at the waves, the wind, the problems, because he knows that if you take your eyes off Jesus, you will begin to sink. But today, God is calling you to lift your head. He invites you to leave this place of fear, this valley of doubt, and to walk again in faith, no matter how far you have strayed, no matter how much you have hesitated. God's grace is greater than any fall. He not only sustains you, He restores you, renews you, strengthens you. Remember that faith is not a feeling. It is not something dependent on circumstances or what your eyes can see. Faith is a decision. It is choosing to trust in God even when everything seems to be falling apart. It is declaring with conviction, "I believe, Lord, even if I do not see, even if I do not feel, even if I do not understand, I believe." Think of the woman with the issue of blood, who struggled for years against an illness that seemed invincible. She spent everything she had, consulted every doctor, but found no cure. Until one day she heard about Jesus. And despite her weakness, her pain, and the crowd that separated her from the Master, she made a decision. "If I just touch His garments, I will be healed." This is the faith that overcomes trials, a faith that acts, that moves, that does not accept being paralyzed by circumstances. And what happened? The moment she touched Jesus, her healing was instantaneous. But see, it was not the physical touch that performed the miracle. It was the faith behind the touch. How many people were touching Jesus at that moment? Many. but only one was transformed, because only one touched with faith. So it is with you. Perhaps you are surrounded by other Christians, living a religious life, but not experiencing the power of God. Perhaps you are touching Jesus superficially, without truly believing in the miracle he can perform. I encourage you today to touch Jesus with faith, with confidence, with the boldness of someone who knows he is capable of changing any situation. You might be thinking, but my faith is so small. Can God really help me? Let me remind you of something. It's not the size of your faith that matters, but to whom it is directed. Jesus said that if we have faith the size of a mustard seed, we can move mountains. Not because we are powerful, but because the God we believe in is all-powerful. Sometimes God allows us to face storms precisely to teach us this. He knows that without trials, our faith will not grow. Just as the muscles of the body only strengthen with exercise, faith only matures when it is tested. Do not fear the trials. They did not come to destroy you, but to prepare you for something greater. Think of Abraham, who waited decades for God's promise that he would be the father of a great nation to be fulfilled. When he finally had his son Isaac, God asked something unthinkable, that he sacrifice the boy. What a test of faith that was. Abraham did not understand why, but he trusted in God's character. He knew that God was faithful and that somehow he would fulfill his promise. And at the crucial moment, when Abraham was about to obey, God intervened. He tested Abraham's faith, but he did not let him suffer loss. So it will be with you. God may be asking you for something difficult, something you do not understand, but trust in him. He knows what he is doing. He has a purpose, and his faithfulness never fails. Now consider another scenario. Job. He lost everything, family, possessions, health, in a short time. His friends accused him. His wife encouraged him to abandon God. But Job remained faithful. He said, "Though he slay me, yet will I hope in him." What kind of faith is this? A faith not based on circumstances, but on God's character. And the end of Job's story is evidence that God rewards those who trust in him. Everything Job lost was restored double. Today, you may be in the middle of a desert without seeing any signs of restoration. Perhaps you are surrounded by negative voices telling you to give up, to abandon your faith. I tell you, do not give up. Do not let circumstances dictate the course of your life. Do not let discouragement steal your confidence in God. The secret to overcoming trials is not in human strength, but in dependence on God. It is in prayer that we find this strength. When we kneel before God, we recognize that we are small, but we also declare that He is great. When we cry out with all our hearts, we move the heavens. Remember the disciples in the midst of the storm. They were terrified, thinking they would die. But in their desperation, they turned to Jesus, who was sleeping in the boat. And Jesus, with a simple word, calmed the wind and the waves. So it will be in your life. When you cry out to God, He rises. He rebukes the storms, brings peace where there was chaos, brings order where there was disorder. But you need to cry out, not timidly, but with all the strength of your soul. God is not indifferent to your suffering. He sees your tears, hears your cries, and is ready to act. And when God's answer comes, be grateful. Do not let the miracle go unnoticed. How often do we ask for something from God, receive it, but forget to give thanks? Do not be like the 9 lepers who were healed and did not return to give thanks. Be like the one who returned, who recognized God's goodness and gave Him glory. Today I challenge you to renew your faith. No matter where you are in your journey, God wants to take you further. He wants your faith to be stronger, deeper, more resilient. He wants you to be like a tree planted by the streams of water, which yields its fruit in season and whose leaves do not wither. But this requires commitment. It requires time with God. It requires prayer, reading the Word, fellowship with other Christians. There are no shortcuts. The faith that overcomes trials is built day by day, decision by decision, prayer by prayer. And when the trials come, because they will come, you will be ready, not because you are strong, but because the God who dwells in you is strong. And he will never fail. So keep going, my brother. Keep marching, my sister. Even if the Jordan seems impassable, even if the walls of Jericho seem unshakable, even if the wind and the waves seem stronger than you can bear, God is with you. He is faithful. He is powerful, and he will not leave you nor abandon you. Trust in him. Rest in him. And above all, keep believing, because the victory is already guaranteed. God bless you. Write in the comments, I believe in the power of the word, if you believe that the confession of faith can change everything. You know how difficult it is to walk by faith when everything around us challenges us. There are moments when God's silence seems deafening and the problems shout louder. Have you ever been through that? That moment when, even while praying, it seems like the heavens are closed and the answer won't come. These are the moments when we are tested most deeply. But I tell you with all conviction, God never leaves us alone. He may be silent, but he is not absent. He is watching over you, sustaining you, and often carrying you when your strength is not enough to go on. Do you remember Martha and Mary, the sisters of Lazarus? They sent a message to Jesus saying, Lord, the one you love is sick. They waited anxiously, trusting that Jesus would come before it was too late. But he delayed, and Lazarus died. Imagine what those women felt. Frustration, sadness, perhaps even a sense of betrayal. When Jesus finally arrived, Martha said, If you had been here, my brother would not have died. How many times have you said something similar to God? If you had listened to me, I wouldn't be in this situation. If you had acted, I wouldn't have lost this or that. But look at what Jesus did. He wept with them. He sympathized with their pain. But he also said something extraordinary. I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me will live, even though they die. Jesus then went to Lazarus' tomb and called him back to life. This same Jesus is with you now. He knows what you are facing. He feels your pain, and he has the power to transform even the most desperate situation. He may not respond the way you expect or in the time you would like, but trust. He is working on something much greater than you can imagine. And here is the crucial point. Often, the greatest miracle is not the change of circumstances, but the transformation of our hearts. Sometimes God uses trials to shape us, to teach us to trust him in ways we never would have imagined. Because in the end, the purpose of the Christian life is not comfort, but conformity to the image of Christ. I know this is hard to accept. No one likes to suffer. No one likes to wait. But trials have a purpose. They teach us patience, humility, and dependence on God. They remind us that we are not self-sufficient, that we need the Lord every moment, with every breath. And if there is something you should hold in your heart today, it is this. God never wastes a trial. He is using every tear, every struggle, every moment of pain to transform you, to bring you to a place of greater intimacy with him. Remember Paul and Silas, who, even while imprisoned, with their feet chained and their bodies wounded, chose to praise God. They didn't praise because the circumstances were favorable, but because they trusted that God was in control. And what happened? The chains broke, the prison doors opened, and they were set free. Perhaps you are trapped in a situation that seems hopeless. Maybe the chains of fear, doubt, or despair are holding you captive. I encourage you to do what Paul and Silas did. Praise. Don't wait for the change to praise. Praise in the midst of the struggle, because praise is a powerful weapon. It not only changes the environment around you, but also changes you on the inside. And when you praise in the midst of the trial, something extraordinary happens. God manifests himself. He brings freedom, not just physical, but spiritual and emotional. He gives you a peace that surpasses all understanding, a joy that does not depend on circumstances. But maybe you are still wondering, what if God doesn't change my situation? What if things don't get better? This is an honest question, and I want to tell you something very important. Faith is not believing that God will do what you want. It is believing that He will do what is best. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were thrown into the fiery furnace because they refused to worship another god. Before being thrown in, they said something extraordinary to the king. If we are thrown into the furnace, the God we serve can deliver us. But if He does not, even then, we will not worship another god. That is the faith that overcomes trials. It is not a faith conditioned to God's response, but a faith that trusts in His goodness, regardless of the circumstances. And see what happened. Even in the furnace, God was with them. The king saw a fourth man walking with them in the fire, and they came out unharmed, not even the smell of smoke on their clothes. I don't know what furnace you're facing today, but I know this. God is with you in the midst of the fire. He will not allow the flames to consume you. He will sustain you, protect you, and, at the right time, He will bring you out of there, stronger, more confident, more like Him. So, my dear brother, my dear sister, do not give up. Do not let difficulties steal your hope. God is faithful. He is working, even when you do not see it. He is in control, even when everything seems out of control. And when the victory comes, because it will come, you will look back and see how good God was, how He was with you in every step, in every tear, in every prayer. You will realize that the trial was not just a struggle, but an opportunity to experience God's power and presence in a way you never imagined. So, today, rise up in faith. Declare like the psalmist, "Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me." And above all, remember, the victory is not just at the end of the trial, but in God's presence in the midst of it. Because with Him, even the fiercest storms become moments of peace. May God bless you, strengthen you, and fill you with His peace. And may you say, like Job at the end of it all, "My ears had heard of you, but now my eyes have seen you." Amen. Write in the comment, "My blessing is coming." If you believe that God is already working in your favor, share this blessed video so that it can touch and help others just like you and me. Want to go even deeper in faith and prayer? Download our exclusive ebook on how to strengthen your spirituality today. The link is in the comments below. Don't forget to click the subscribe button if you haven't done so yet. Thank you very much from the bottom of my heart for being part of our faith community. If you wish to support our channel a bit more, consider becoming a member of our channel. Here are 2 more videos so that you can continue your spiritual search and growth in faith. Thank you, and may God bless you all. See you soon.